Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Ready for another one?
Always. Today we're going west, following in the footsteps of Lewis and Clark.
Literally through their journals.
We have both Lewis and Looker, two perspectives on this massive expedition. It's amazing.
It is. You get a really complete picture.
Have you ever wanted to just, trek across uncharted territory?
Who hasn't?
Reading these journals, it's like being right there with them.
The detail they recorded is incredible. Daily weather, the terrain, all the wildlife they encountered.
Even like what they ate, how they were feeling, it's all there.
It really brings the journey to life.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Thomas Jefferson, the visionary behind this whole thing. We know he was obsessed with finding a water route to the Pacific.
Manifest destiny, right? America stretching from coast to coast.
Exactly. But I was surprised to learn he also hoped they'd find evidence of, extinct creatures.
Jefferson was a huge science enthusiast. He sent Lewis and Clark with specific instructions to document everything they could. New plants, new animals, anything that could expand scientific knowledge.
So they weren't just explorers.
They were proto-scientists,
Yeah.
part of this huge effort to understand the natural world.
And they set off in 1804 from River du Bois near St. Louis.
The start of an epic journey.
And almost immediately they run into trouble. The Sioux.
A powerful tribe on the plains, very protective of their territory.
Imagine seeing this group of armed strangers coming up your river.
I wouldn't be too happy about it. And they weren't. They actually tried to block Lewis and Clark from continuing up the Missouri.
Oh, wow. That must have been intense. How did they manage that?
It took a combination of strength and diplomacy. Lewis and Clark made it clear they wouldn't be deterred, but they also showed respect. They gave gifts, emphasized their peaceful intentions.
It's interesting how they had to navigate these complex relationships.
Yeah, it really highlights their leadership skills, their cultural sensitivity.
Because they were also tasked with mapping the Louisiana Purchase, right? That huge territory Jefferson had just bought from France.
That's right. They were venturing into a vast unknown.
And speaking of important figures, we have to talk about Sacagawea.
Oh, absolutely. Her role is fascinating. A young Shoshone woman who joined the expedition.
With her infant son.
Right. She served as a guide and interpreter. Her knowledge of the terrain was invaluable, especially as they got into the Rocky Mountains.
I mean, how much did this one woman contribute to the success of this expedition?
More than most people realize. She facilitated communication with other Native American tribes, helped them get supplies, safe passage.
And just her presence as a woman with a child.
It helped. Some tribes might have seen the expedition as a military force, but she symbolized peace, family.
She completely changed how they were perceived. And to think she was barely out of her teens, traveling with a baby, facing all the same hardships.
It's incredible. There's a reason she's become such a legendary figure.
She really highlights how interconnected this whole journey was. Relying on the help of the Native American tribes, the diplomacy, the harsh realities of the land.
It wasn't just about planting a flag. It was about survival, day after day.
Exactly. Speaking of which, they were entering a world teeming with wildlife.
Oh, completely new to them. They were seeing things Europeans had never seen before.
What were some of those standout moments?
Well, Lewis was particularly fascinated by the natural world. He documented grizzly bears, prairie dogs, bighorn sheep, all in meticulous detail.
So their journals are like time capsules almost, filled with descriptions of this untouched landscape.
And not just descriptions. Lewis collected plant specimens, created this whole herbarium as they traveled.
Wow. Like sending seeds of knowledge back east.
Exactly. He was very thorough.
And as they're going, they're not just encountering new species, they're facing some serious challenges.
Like the Great Falls of the Missouri. 5 massive waterfalls stretching over miles.
Had to portage everything around those.
Weeks of grueling work, hauling their boats, supplies over rough terrain.
I bet their journals really capture that frustration.
Oh, yeah. You can feel the exhaustion, but also the determination to push through.
And that determination, that's what exploration is all about, right? Facing the unknown, finding a way.
And that often meant relying on everyone in the Corps. The skilled hunters, the resourceful blacksmiths. It was a team effort.
All leading up to that incredible moment, November 1805. Over a year of hardship, and they finally reached the Pacific.
Can you imagine that feeling after everything they've been through? To finally see the ocean.
A pivotal moment in American history. The Pacific coast was no longer just a dream. It was a reality, accessible through the heart of the continent.
And they did it with grit, determination, and a lot of help along the way.
They mapped this vast territory, documented countless new species, built relationships with the Native American tribes, opened up the West. They were true pioneers.
And their journals, they're a testament to that spirit, a glimpse into this world on the cusp of transformation.
But their journey wasn't over. They still had to make it back home. And that's where we'll pick up next time.
Back again, delving deeper into the Lewis and Clark journals.
Last time, we left them on the shores of the Pacific. Triumphant. But their journey wasn't over, was it?
Not even close. They had the whole return trip ahead of them.
And that was, I imagine, a whole other set of challenges.
Oh, absolutely. For starters, they weren't traveling light anymore. Think of it. Maps, specimens, journals full of observations. This was about bringing back all that knowledge.
So there was a different kind of pressure now. A responsibility to preserve everything they'd gathered.
Exactly. Plus, they had to cross the Rockies again. Those treacherous passes, unpredictable weather, and they were dealing with exhaustion, dwindling supplies.
Not to mention the constant threat of hostile tribes. Makes you realize reaching the Pacific was just one part of this much bigger story. Did they even take the same route back?
Not exactly. They were still eager to explore, gather more information. Remember, this was still largely uncharted territory. In fact, they split up for a while. Lewis explored the Meriwether River. Clark mapped the Yellowstone.
Wow, maximizing their time, covering even more ground? That seems risky.
Splitting up did make them more vulnerable, sure, but it also allowed them to bring back a much richer, more complete picture of the West. And they were meticulous about documenting everything, even on the way back.
So what jumps out at you from those later journal entries?
You see a shift in focus. They're still noting new plants, animals, but there's also this growing urgency to get home safe. The writing gets more introspective, reflecting on the hardships, the bonds they formed.
It must have been a real psychological journey, too, processing all they'd seen and experienced.
There are moments of real frustration, even despair, when they hit setbacks. But there's always this underlying resilience, a drive to finish their mission.
And, of course, they still relied on the relationships they'd built with the Native American tribes along the way.
Essential relationships. Tribes like the Nez Perce, they provided food, shelter, vital information on the terrain. A reminder that this journey was never just Lewis and Clark. It was about those interactions with the people who knew this land best.
It's a good point. How much their success depended on the generosity and knowledge of others. Speaking of which, that story about Lewis's near-fatal encounter with the Blackfeet always stuck with me.
Yeah, that was a close one. Lewis and a small group, they stumbled onto a Blackfeet camp. Misunderstandings happened, a confrontation. They barely got out alive. Really highlights the dangers, even heading home.
And the potential for cultural misunderstandings. Not all encounters were peaceful.
No, not at all. And their journals reflect that. You see them trying to understand this complex situation, the alliances between tribes, the resentment towards European expansion. It wasn't a simple picture.
And still, they're diligently recording everything. I read Lewis even discovered a new flower, Lewis's monkey flower, while dealing with a painful abscess on his back.
Talk about dedication. Even facing hardship, their curiosity, their drive to document never wavered.
Tough guys. But even they needed a break. They finally made it back to the familiar comfort of Fort Mandan.
Must felt like a true homecoming. That relief, the sense of accomplishment, knowing the worst was behind them.
And after reuniting with the rest of the Corps at the meeting of the Yellowstone in Missouri, they started that last leg downriver.
Back to civilization. By September 1806, after more than 2 years, they finally reached St. Louis. Can you imagine the celebration?
They were heroes. They'd done what many thought impossible.
And they returned with this treasure trove of knowledge that would change American history.
But their return also marked a new beginning. The challenge of processing their experience, compiling their findings, understanding the impact their journey would have on the West.
And that's what we'll explore in our final part, the legacy of Lewis and Clark and the lasting impact of their incredible journey.
Back again for the final leg of our Lewis and Clark journey.
We've followed them across the continent and back, and now it's time to explore what they left behind.
Their legacy, right.
Yeah.
They returned to St. Louis as heroes, but then what?
Well, they faced a new challenge, one might say. How to make sense of this mountain of information they brought back.
All those journals, plant specimens, maps, it must have been overwhelming.
Oh, it was a monumental task just to organize it all. And unfortunately, Lewis died in 1809 before they would finish.
That's so sad, after everything they went through together. But at least their findings were eventually published, right?
Yes, the first official account came out in 1814. Detailed descriptions of the geography, the plants and animals, the Native American tribes.
A bestseller, I bet.
It was. People were captivated by the West, and these journals fueled that fascination.
They were more than explorers, they were authors. Their words created this whole new understanding of the American landscape.
And their work had a huge impact on science. Lewis's botanical collection, for instance, it significantly expanded what was known about plant life in the West. Many of the species he documented were completely new to European science.
Amazing to think that even today, scientists are still studying Lewis's work. Those herbarium specimens preserved all those years ago.
And beyond the science, their maps were crucial in opening up the West. They charted a path through the heart of the continent, invaluable information for those who followed.
They literally paved the way for westward expansion. But of course, that expansion had a complicated impact on the Native American tribes who already lived there.
Absolutely. The Lewis and Clark expedition marked a turning point in the relationship between the U.S. and Native Americans. Their journey, while meant to be peaceful, ultimately contributed to the displacement of many indigenous peoples.
Their journals give us a glimpse into these relationships between different tribes and their interactions with European traders and explorers. It's not a simple story of discovery.
Right, it's a complex web of cultures and interests colliding. And while their observations provide valuable insights into the lives and beliefs of the tribes they encountered, we have to acknowledge the power imbalance. Lewis and Clark's arrival signaled the beginning of a new era, one that would bring about dramatic changes for Native Americans.
A legacy of triumph and tragedy, then. Incredible exploration and scientific discovery, but also the seeds of conflict and displacement.
That's the duality we still grapple with today. How do we reconcile the achievements of exploration with their impact on indigenous populations?
A question that resonates with explorations even now. Space exploration, deep-sea research, we still face these ethical dilemmas as we push the boundaries of knowledge.
The story of Lewis and Clark reminds us that exploration is never just about reaching a destination. It's about the journey itself, the choices made along the way, and the ripple effects those choices have.
Their journals are a window into a pivotal moment in American history, a time of great promise, but also great upheaval. And it's a story that still has so much to teach us.
It speaks to that human desire to explore, to understand, to push beyond the known. But it also challenges us to think critically about the consequences of our actions, to consider everyone's perspective, and to work toward a more just and equitable future.
It's been an incredible journey diving deep into these journals with you. I really encourage our listeners to check them out for themselves. Adventure, scientific discovery, a nuanced look at a key moment in American history. It's all there.
And it's a story that continues to resonate, reminding us of the power of curiosity, the interconnectedness of human experience, and the enduring legacy of the past.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.